this video, I'm gonna give you 5 writing tips that some people may say are controversial, but I have found to be very true when I've written my books. I have published 7 books and I've written close to 10 or more than 10. I'm like losing count. And these are things I've found to be very true, even though some people might not agree with me. So I'm just gonna jump right in and tell you. My first one is you don't always have to love writing to be a writer. A lot of people talk about writing when they're inspired and writing when they're super motivated, but not a lot of people talk about how important it is to also show up and write when you're not feeling like you want to write and you're feeling kind of tired and you just don't really feel like engaging with your story and maybe you've hit a wall and maybe things are hard. Writing is my favorite thing in the world. I love writing, but some days I just don't feel like doing it. But just because I feel like that on some days doesn't mean that I'm not a writer and that I don't love what I do and I'm not passionate about writing. Just because you don't feel it every single day doesn't mean that you don't deeply, deeply love it. And it takes pushing through that feeling and showing up anyway and writing anyway to continuously move closer to finishing your book. You're not gonna finish your book if you're always waiting to feel motivated to write. It's great when you do feel motivated, but you also have to show up to your work on the days that you don't. My second one is it's more important to be persistent than it is to be talented. You can go so much farther by being a little insane and incredibly persistent than you can by being talented. I've been told so many times in my life that I had no natural talent for writing, that I wrote like an amateur fan fiction author, my prose was really boring and flat, and just that I didn't have any natural talent for this. But I was a little insane and completely obsessed, and through sheer force of will and persistence, I learned how to improve that prose so that I could tell the stories that I wanted to tell. I went to college with many writers who were incredibly talented, who could sit down and write beautiful prose, who could write really clear, interesting stories, who just could draw me in with their words so effectively, and I was completely in awe of them. And a lot of those writers haven't published very much or haven't published at all, and maybe it's because they decided to go pursue other careers and do other things, which is completely justified and 100% fine. But if your goal is to write and to publish books and to find readers and to make this your life, you don't need natural talent, you just need grit and work ethic, and you can get better at writing. Being talented is great, but being talented doesn't necessarily mean that you finish a book. So it's much more important to have persistence and grit, because all of this stuff in writing can be learned. You don't necessarily need talent for it. Number 3 is don't always kill your darlings. A lot of people love using this as writing advice, saying, kill your darlings, make sure to kill your darlings. And it's a way to encourage you to be critical and self-critical of your own work and to be unafraid to get rid of things that aren't working, get rid of scenes that you love if they're not serving the plot, and get rid of characters and all of that stuff. But it's very important not to take this too far, because if they're your darlings, they're your darlings for a reason. It's super important that you take your ego out of your writing when you're trying to improve. If you hold on to your writing and your prose with white-knuckled fists and you have a lot of ego around your work and you are not receptive to people criticizing you, then you're not going to be able to get better. But in my opinion, this advice shouldn't necessarily apply to characters who you love or scenes that you're just completely drawn to for some reason. Your subconscious is attracted to different things in your book for a reason. Your darlings are your darlings for a reason. You might not understand what you love about a certain dynamic so much, but it appeals to something in your brain, in your heart, and it might give you an emotion that is very strong. And if it gives you that strong emotion, it's important that that stays in. Maybe that scene doesn't advance the plot in the way that it needs to, but maybe it can be tweaked so it does without losing what you love about the scene. Maybe what you love about the scene is something as simple as, I really like these 2 characters going undercover at a bar and they have a run-in with the serial killer at the bar. Just the aesthetic of that is really interesting, and going undercover is really interesting. And maybe the current version of the scene doesn't propel the plot forward as much as it needs to, but maybe you can change the component in the scene so that it does propel the plot without losing the parts that are your darlings, where they're in the bar, undercover, and all of that stuff. I write primarily for my own pleasure and also to deliver pleasure to my readers, so I'm always very aware of the things that are my darlings in my book and why I feel so strongly about them and why I love them, and I try to preserve those and keep that intact in my book. Also, I like to have a real reason if I'm going to kill a character. I don't like going around killing characters for no reason, just because it hurts me and hurts my readers who are very attached to my characters. And if I'm going to kill a character, it has to feel right or propel the story forward in some way. I don't like just willy-nilly going and killing characters. So I guess my tip is just pushing back on that and telling you that you should really know when to protect your darlings, and it's important to. Don't go around killing all of the things that make everybody love your book to begin with. My fourth, maybe controversial tip is I would advise against fully pantsing or editing as you go until you have internalized your story structure. Stephen King pantses his books. He talks a lot in all of his writing books about how he loves to pants books, but the reason he can get away with doing that is because he's internalized what a story is supposed to feel like and how it's supposed to be paced and what things he's supposed to do in the story to get it to flow well. If it's your first book, you might not have internalized all of those things yet, and so it's way more likely that you run into a wall. I'm not saying you have to plot out every single scene, but outlining should be a part of your writing process. If outlining kills all of your joy for writing, maybe it doesn't have to come before you write the book. Maybe you do pants a draft, but then you outline before you write your second draft, so you can be thoughtful in your revisions. Editing as you go is a giant waste of time unless you've already internalized that story structure and know that what you've written will be sticking around. If you have written many, many books and you have confidence that that is the case, then it's fine to edit as you go. But if you are starting out and you haven't internalized all of the different pieces that make an effective story yet, it's way better to just go forth and write a messy first draft and then change things slowly throughout the draft as you improve it than it is to, after you've written every chapter, go back and edit it and then move forward. I have found that the only way to internalize all of the things that go into writing a book is by writing something messy and learning how to fix it. And then over time, going through that process has made it so that when I write something, it is still messy, but it's not as messy as the ones that I've written before. And my fifth controversial writing tip is there is always an exception to the rule. A lot of writers like to say, always do this or never do this. That is never actually true. Sometimes you should tell instead of show. Sometimes it's a good idea to use an adverb in a dialogue tag. Writing is an art form, and just like in any art, you have to make creative choices. Showing and telling are both tools in your writer's toolbox that accomplish different things. If you say always show and never tell, you can run into problems because you will be showing stuff that will drag your pacing down, showing stuff that is not important. It's not important to show your character waking up and brushing their teeth every morning. Telling serves a huge purpose in narrative storytelling, and it's important to understand what the balance between those things is, but they both have to be in your story and they both serve a purpose. Understanding these rules is important because once you understand them, you know when to break them, and you want to know these rules so that when you do break them, you understand why you're doing it and you're making a choice to do it instead of just subconsciously throwing an adverb into every single dialogue tag. But any always or never pieces of writing advice are usually not true. So I don't actually know how controversial those are, but those are my 5 most controversial writing tips that I can give you. I hope that that was helpful to you, or at least mildly entertaining. If it was, I would be super grateful if you could give this video a like and also subscribe to my channel. My name is Claire Fraze, and I'm an award-winning author who makes weekly videos sharing actionable writing tips that helped me make my own writing better. I'm the author of the 5-book paranormal thriller They Stay series, along with The Love Trials, which is coming out on April 28th, and I am so excited about it. I hope you have a good week, everybody, and as always, happy writing.